What's going on, everyone? It is very likely that Kevin Durant could be done with the Brooklyn Nets as soon as this coming season. There's a lot of talk of Kyrie Irving potentially being traded, that they don't want to extend Kyrie. And the whole reason Kevin Durant went to Brooklyn was to play with Kyrie. So if Kyrie's gone, traded, they just let him go, whatever ends up being the end result with the Kyrie situation, which I did do a video about a potential trade with the Lakers. I will link that video down in the description below. I also did a potential 3-team trade that I'm going to talk about one of those legs in this video, but that other video was just so long. I understand many people might not want to watch that entire video. That video will be linked down in the description as well. But to further explain the Kevin Durant situation, Kevin Durant hasn't even talked to the front office or anybody in the Brooklyn Nets organization since they got eliminated in the first round. That is usually not a good sign from your star, right? And it's very likely he's kind of just sitting back, trying to wait and see what are they going to do with Kyrie Irving. And if Kevin Durant does decide, hey, I'm done, I want to leave, then you're going to have a plethora of teams, right? You got 90% of the league is going to do whatever they can to get a Kevin Durant. So there's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of bidding wars, things along those lines. But the one thing that Kevin Durant's going to want, right, is to be on a contender. He's not going to want to go to like the Orlando Magic or Sacramento or, Detroit, something along those lines. He's going to want to go to a team that can one, trade for him without gutting their entire roster, and two, actually still remain a contender and a legit contender that could win a championship this year and for the foreseeable future, right? That's the whole thing. So insert the Pheonix Suns. I think a Pheonix Suns trade is a very likely and very realistic style of trade because they, much like Brooklyn, have a guy in Deandre Ayton that they kind of want to wash their hands with. They haven't extended him. They could, of course, match his salary, whatever market demands as far as he goes. They could always match that, but it seems like they're done with Ayton. Ayton didn't even want to play in the final game, and there was all that drama, all that mess behind the scenes, and they seem like, hey, we're done. Let Ayton go. We don't need him. We're better off without him. And whether that's true or not, that seems to be the mindset that the Pheonix Suns have at this time. So a realistic trade with the Pheonix Suns for Kevin Durant would be Bridges, Ayton, and Crowder. The money matches. It makes sense for both teams. Obviously, the Pheonix Suns get Kevin Durant, and then the Brooklyn Nets get some quality pieces to, supplement the loss of Kevin Durant. And then very likely Kyrie gets traded, so they get some other pieces there. But of course, you're probably going to have to throw in a draft pick or two, but it's not going to be a, low type of draft pick. You're not talking, it's going to be top 5 protected, all of that stuff. And with the team with Kevin Durant on it, they're likely going to be a contender every year. So the draft picks aren't a big deal, but this would be your core. It'd be Ayton, Bridges, and you have Jay Crowder. Now, as far as the Pheonix Suns, it makes perfect sense, right? You have a big three, and arguably the best big three in the entire NBA, in Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant. Not just that, but you have a proven guy that can get it done, that can, hit the big shots, can lead your team, can win you games, all of those things, can play defense. He's, incredibly intangible. He's a willing passer when he needs to be. All of those things. We saw with the Pheonix Suns that if Chris Paul and Devin Booker lay an egg, they're done. That's it. In a lot of cases, if one of them lays an egg, they're done. That's it. Because they are the engine. And not just that, Chris Paul's health concerns, stuff like that. Devin Booker's even had some injuries throughout. But they also don't have that big shot guy, right? Devin Booker and Chris Paul can both hit shots, but they work more in the mid-range. Where Kevin Durant, he can space the floor, he can knock down threes, he can knock down mid, he can score anywhere on the floor, right? He's one of the few players in the league that is just a complete deadly threat from wherever he's at. I mean, he can pull up from half court if he wants to. And to have that scoring threat of Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant is incredible. And imagine Chris Paul's position, being, the point guard, being able to orchestrate and be able to deviate between Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. I mean, what more could Chris Paul ask for? I mean, that's about as good of a position as anyone could be put into, right? But also, when it comes to Deandre Ayton, right, he is the guy that many teams are going to bid for. But the Pheonix Suns don't lose anything with him, right? They're very likely going to let him go. They very likely might let him walk for nothing. So DeAndre Ayton, he's a big man in the league. He's a guy that can get you 20-10 a game. He is a solid piece in the NBA. He's not the greatest defender in the world, but he is a guy that can do some damage, right? We've seen him have some pretty big games. We've seen him be a crucial part in the Phoenix Suns offense when need be. And now he is that guy. He's kind of that odd man out right now, especially with the money. Phoenix Suns owner has never really been that guy that's like, I'm going to go shovel out a bunch of money. There was even talks with Chris Paul, right? Are they going to extend him? What are they going to do with Chris Paul? Like the owner's notorious about being cheap when it comes to shoveling out money. So it makes sense that he's not going to want to make the commitment to DeAndre Ayton, especially when DeAndre Ayton doesn't want to make the commitment to the team. So you're basically letting him go for nothing anyway. So why not trade him to go get a Kevin Durant? The big piece, though, is Mikal Bridges. And even in the video that I talked about earlier, that's, a longer video, which is linked down in the description below, I got a lot of comments from people that were like, Bridges is untouchable. They've even said he's untouchable. They're not going to trade him. And I understand that. But you're talking about Kevin Durant. Like, they're not going to trade him in the sense of, like, just to trade him. He's a building block for the future. He's a defensive 3-and-D wing. He's young. He's hungry. He's a great player. He does everything for the Phoenix Suns. He is that guy that you can literally build your team around if need be. And so I understand the idea of like, hey, we're not going to trade him. But there's no way you're getting Kevin Durant unless you trade Bridges. Jay Crowder and Ayton and Cam Johnson and Cameron Payne, they're not going to get it done. I mean, they're like, I've even seen people throw out Shamet. Like, the Brooklyn Nets just wanted to get rid of him because they thought he was terrible. Like, they're not going to trade Kevin Durant, especially when you're going to have a legit bidding war. You're going to have all kinds of things. I mean, even the Golden State Warriors could put together a really great package around Wiseman and stuff if Kevin Durant wanted to come back to the Warriors. I mean, you're going to have so much competition. There's no way you're getting Kevin Durant without trading Bridges, if we're being realistic here. Now, I understand that some people think like, oh, no, there's always a way. I mean, if we're being real, Bridges has to be a part of that trade. Otherwise, they're just going to trade Kevin Durant elsewhere. Unless Kevin Durant says, I only want to go to the Phoenix Suns, I'm not going anywhere else, which I don't know why. He's better off saying, I want to go to the Warriors. I want to go to Milwaukee and play with Giannis. And now you have a super team. I mean, there's other teams that are just as good that are contenders that he could go to. I mean, even Boston could make a reasonable, great trade for him, right? And so there are a lot of teams. The Pelicans is another team that has a ton of draft picks, a ton of young talent. They could even give up a Brandon Ingram and upgrade him for a Kevin Durant. I mean, there's so much competition out there. There's no way Phoenix is going to get Kevin Durant without trading Bridges. And I love Bridges. He is an incredible player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sell him short. But he's not Kevin Durant. And it's very likely he may never be Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant can play defense. He can pass the ball. He can put 30 a night very consistently. He is that number one option on a team that is a championship contending team. Bridges, as of right now, is not that guy. He is a great piece for the Phoenix Suns with what Phoenix has. Now, of course, could he go to, say in Orlando and end up being the best guy on the team and maybe he does develop into a superstar? It's very possible, but he's not going to go to a team like that and he's not going to get traded in that situation. But you're talking about Kevin Durant. Like, I'm not talking about, trading Bridges just for, the sake of trading for Bridges. But the idea of like he is untouchable is not the case. I mean, he's untouchable to most teams, but if somebody wanted to trade Jason Tatum, like Boston wants to trade Jason Tatum, I'm not saying this would ever happen, but say they contact Phoenix, say, hey, we'll trade you Jason Tatum for Bridges and a couple pieces. You're telling me Phoenix is going to say, nah, we're good. That means he's not untouchable. And Kevin Durant, I think, is one of those players that makes him not untouchable. But as far as it goes for the Brooklyn Nets, they are put in a great position for the future. They are arguably one of the best defensive teams in the league with Ben Simmons, Crowder, Bridges, Ayton, and then they have shooters still around this team. They are still very competitive, right? Even without Kevin Durant in the Eastern Conference, they might be just as good at next year as they were this year. Granted, the Brooklyn Nets had all kinds of messes. James Harden wasn't James Harden. There was all the drama behind the scenes. Kyrie Irving only played like 20 games. But nonetheless, you still have a very good, young, competitive team that can compete with most teams in the Eastern Conference. And you have a core of Ben Simmons, Ayton, and Bridges that you can build around for the future. And Bridges, he's only making like $6 million a year for the next like 5 years. Like, that is a great position for Brooklyn to be in. They would have all this cap space, all this stuff. They could go get another star, Bradley Beal or whatever, and now you have like a real super team, right? You have like, wow, this team is really good. This team could be competing for a championship. So for the Brooklyn Nets, it makes a ton of sense. You get some draft picks, you get some great young talent for your future to add around Ben Simmons and the shooters like Seth and things like that you have on the team already. Patty Mills you can even bring back. You still have Joe Harris. Things like that, I think, is a huge compliment to this three core. But you have your building blocks for the future if you're Brooklyn. And you're in a great position. And you're very likely going to trade Kyrie Irving for whatever you can get. If you can get another star, even the Westbrook idea, right? Westbrook has been thrown out there. Even that, you have Westbrook for a year or you could cut him. Worst case, he stays on the team, it doesn't work out. And now you got $44 million to use for another superstar, right? And being in Brooklyn, players are going to want to go there. Players are going to want to be on the big time show, and be in the spotlight, stuff like that. And you have great building blocks to really capitalize on. And we'll get to see what Bridges really is. So it makes perfect sense if you're the Brooklyn Nets. It is actually a very fair trade for Brooklyn. You get a great young center. You get a great young wing. You still have Ben Simmons. So you're still in a tremendous situation for the future. And then, like I said, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul. What more could you ask for? If healthy, this is the best big three in the league. This is good enough to win you a championship. And you still have some pieces that are going to work for you. You can go get another wing, another big, something along those lines. If you have these three, you don't really need much. You just kind of need to fill out your roster with capable guys, right? Guys that can play defense, guys that, can hit the open shot. These three are not going to have trouble struggling because night in and night out, you have a guy that can be consistent. If Devin Booker and Chris Paul are having a bad night like they did in Game 7, Kevin Durant is likely still going to put up 30 and keep you in the game. So now at least you're in the game and you're not getting blown out. So now you have, maybe you get hot towards the end or something like that instead of sitting the last 5 minutes of the game because you're down 40. Kevin Durant is going to put you in a position to where you're a contender night in and night out. And there's not many teams that can compete with these three. Phoenix, it makes a ton of sense to make that trade because basically you're giving up a guy, like I said, in Ayton, who you're going to get rid of anyway. You're getting rid of Crowder, who was just terrible during the playoffs and is really inconsistent. Yeah, he plays defense, but there's a lot of guys that can do that. So you're not really losing anything there with Ayton and Crowder. The only real loss that you're taking, that you're suffering with, is the loss of Bridges. But you're upgrading Bridges for Kevin Durant. If you ask anybody, just think about that. You're telling me you would not trade Bridges to upgrade to Kevin Durant? You're telling me that the Pheonix Suns right now are better with Bridges than Kevin Durant. I don't believe that. Kevin Durant is still a top 5 guy in the league. There's still talks about him being the best player in the league. So you're talking about going and getting the best player for a guy that is your third option right now. And could Bridges, develop one day into, maybe a second coming of Kevin Durant? It's very possible. But the probability of that really happening is very slim. And Phoenix is in a win now position. They're not waiting around for the next 5-6 years for, Bridges to turn into a superstar, right? They need to win now. You have Booker, who's only getting older, and Chris Paul is definitely only getting older. So you're in a position to where this trade makes so much sense. If you're Phoenix, you immediately become a contender. You immediately become the best team in the league if you go get Kevin Durant with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. The only question would be injuries. As long as you are healthy, I don't see anybody beating them in the West. Nobody in the West was that great this year. Golden State was fantastic, but even they had flaws in their armor. It seemed like this year everyone was just equally bad, if that makes sense. It was just like blowout after blowout after blowout, and like teams that we thought were good weren't very good. And even the Phoenix Suns, they really sold themselves short this year and were very underwhelming and very disappointing. You go get a guy like Kevin Durant, you don't have to worry about that no more. Bridges isn't going to completely change and take over a game. He may be able to here and there randomly, but night in and night out, he's not going to be able to. Kevin Durant is that guy. Kevin Durant, night in and night out, can completely change a game. He can completely take over a game. That's the guy you need if you're Pheonix Suns. But as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you love this trade? Do you hate this trade? I think this is about as fair of a trade as you can get. Both sides genuinely win. Brooklyn, if they're trading Kyrie and Kevin Durant, they're starting from scratch, right? So why wouldn't you want to get two young players that both are, can be a 20 and 10 players. They're both guys that can play defense. You got a big, you got a wing, which is hugely important in this league. And you got Ben Simmons still, who is surrounded by shooters. You're still very competitive if you're Brooklyn, but you got a nice young core to build for the future. And Phoenix, like I said, they're in win now mode. They just shoveled out a bunch of money for Chris Paul. And Devin Booker is only getting older. His contract's going to come up soon. And if they're not in a position to win, he might leave. So you need to get a guy like Kevin Durant to really put you over the top, really make you, now you're a legit contender. Now it's not like, they should win it. It's like, Phoenix is probably going to win the championship. So I just think that if the offer's on the table, you do it. You pull the trigger. This is one of those rare opportunities that most teams don't get. And you got to keep in mind, there are going to be countless teams giving up the mortgage and then some, the house and all the cars, whatever you want to basically go get Kevin Durant. A lot of contenders would trade a lot of pieces to go get Kevin Durant. And so you're going to have a lot of competition. So I just don't see a way you go get Kevin Durant without trading Bridges. They're not going to, Brooklyn doesn't want all of their scraps that just never play and are 5 points, 2 rebound guys every night. They want guys that are potential stars or guys that can really get the job done. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports from this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.